Welcome to Monday Night Raw. Welcome to the Netflix era.
This is a certified hood classic.
둥글게 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 빙글빙글 돌아가며 춤을 춥시다. 손뼉을 치면서 노래를 부르며 랄라랄라 즐겁게 춤추자. 링가링가링가링가링가링가링가링.
Welcome back and happy holidays, everybody. Hopefully you were good little boys and girls in 2024 and Saint McMahon didn't come and poop in your stocking.
And this one they just handed out coal.
Some people might prefer Michael, some might prefer Adam, but I don't want either. I know Anthony was a good little boy. He was gifted with a son.
Yeah, a lot of responsibility now. I'm just joking. Yeah, I had a baby boy, had a son. December 17th, 9 pounds 1 ounce. You can believe it, big boy.
That's a big boy.
He, I was gonna say this is funny, but it's not really funny, like in the context of it. He had some breathing problems when he was getting born, so we had to have an emergency C-section. And while it was happening, he swallowed essentially poop. So when like the baby's first poop, if you don't know, it's like the I forget the word. It's like not like regular poop. It's like what's the
Yes.
Macassium or something like that. I don't know.
Yep.
Something like that. So he swallowed that, and I got into his lungs, so it made it hard for him to breathe on his own. So he was, and this was a 41-week baby. He was really late. He didn't want to come on his due date, so he was more like 5 days after. So he was huge, and so he gets admitted to the NICU, and in there's mostly, I'd say like a majority of them are like preemies, like really like babies that are probably born around like just past like the 30-week mark, where they're not like full term yet.
Yeah.
So the nurse is going from that, where like those babies can like fit like in like their two hands put together, to like my son, who's like can barely fit into their little bed thing that they have. It was a real, but he was awesome. He did great. He's healthy now. After that first night, he made like a full recovery, which is awesome. He was just in there for a while just to be monitored, which is kind of shitty. Like, my wife got like released like before he did, so we had like a whole day of just sitting up at the hospital, like in the waiting room, like in his room, with no really space of our own. So thankfully after that they're just like, you know what, he can just go home, he's fine. So he's been
He can go home and he'll be ready just in time to debut at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, he's taller than Adam Cole. Weighs more than him too, probably. So yeah, he's ready to debut. He watched Raw on Netflix the other day. He fell asleep during the Rock's promo, which I don't know.
Oh boy,
if that's a sign of something. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
He's not a big fan of the Final Boss.
I enjoyed Raw on Netflix. I know if depending on where you're at on the internet, it was either geared toward new viewers or it wasn't geared toward them enough. Like all things in wrestling, people just didn't like it.
Very controversial.
They found a reason.
Yeah. I had a good time. I thought the beginning, like the opening, was really cool. My only concern with it is that because they hyped it up so much, there's a lot of production into it. It was obviously at the Intuit Dome, which in itself is like an experience. And they're not gonna be there again. I think they're in Anaheim next week.
Yep.
Which isn't like the Intuit Dome. It's gonna be a normal Raw show. Which this week I'm more excited for. I guess this week to see what it's actually gonna be like on a week-to-week basis. But yeah, they went all out for this one, and I feel like some people will return for this week and they'll be like, wait, it's not gonna be that fucking cool every week, where like The Rock and The Undertaker and all these people just come out like Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan?
They just don't just come out randomly all the time. No. We got these characters that you probably never even heard of before, these wrestlers. You gotta learn to love them. And then I think a lot of people are like, who are these vanilla midgets? And I'm not gonna watch them anymore. And then I can turn it off and they'll be like, oh, wrestling's so fucking dumb. And then, we'll go back to all our diehard fans could be happy again.
I think they did the right thing with your Chad Gables and your Gunthers and the New Day, and they either gave them a vignette or they gave them a little segment, just kind of introducing them. And I think it's smart, and I hope they continue to do that the next 3-4 weeks, just kind of introduce who's going to be on the show. Everyone's complaining that Gunther didn't fight because he's the champion of the show, but you're not going to blow your entire load in 1 week. Yeah. Right? Like, you already had Punk and Rollins, you already had Roman and Solo. You're not going to do a title match, too. And then I saw the other complaint is how McIntyre lost. It sets it up so that way the next time he fights Jey Uso, he's just going to beat the shit out of him. I hope people realize that. We finally got the payoff to Rhea and Dominic. Rhea kicked him right in the balls. She crushed him. And now we wait for either Becky or Charlotte to show up and challenge Rhea. But yeah, it was a good show. It reminded me of a holiday show, one of the holiday tour shows. Where you walk away and you're like, that was fun. But not every Raw can just be fun from top to bottom. Monday Night Raw is on television for years. At time of recording, the anniversary is actually tomorrow. And it traveled multiple networks. It had multiple logos, multiple announce teams, a lot of lovely opening theme songs. Probably one of the most consistent shows when it comes to good themes. And it had many, many, many moments. Good, bad, ugly, and surprising. Now, as we kind of dive into the surprising moments, the crazier moments in Monday Night Raw history, as we have to do when we list things out, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna do a full preface. I'm not listing any Money in the Bank moments. I know, yes, I'm a huge Dolph Ziggler mark. That was a big moment. Not gonna talk about it. I feel like the Money in the Bank stuff gets talked about so much. We don't need to touch it. We're not gonna talk about every debut that happened. Yes, Umaga debuted. Yes, Sin Cara debuted. Yes, I mean, there's so many debuts.
Or Tensai debut. We're not going to talk about him?
No. We're also not going to talk about every single return. We'll touch on one of the Rocks, not all of them. We're not going to talk about every time Taker returned for those 6 years of part-time work. We're not going to talk about The Fiend returning. We're not going to talk about the numerous times Stone Cold came back or Triple H. We'll just, there's compilations of those. Go enjoy yourself on YouTube. That's what I do. But what we have here, we do have some debuts, some returns, and just some crazy moments. This is if you're a South Park fan, if you remember the Member Berries, this is a Member Berry episode of surprise moments on Monday Night Raw TV, and where best to start than choppy your pee-pee when resident scientist, doctor, whatever you want to call him, Val Venus, who at the time was a porn star, had sexual relations. He had sexual relations with a lot of women on TV. Ken Shamrock's sister. I'm trying to think what Goldust's wife. Some of the Godfather's hoes. But this lady he was with was the sister of Yamaguchi-san, the manager of Kai and Tai. And I think in kayfabe that would also be Taka Michinoku's sister. So they caught Val Venus because they threatened, choppy your pee-pee. They captured him. They tied him up with his arms up. He was naked, and they took a katana, and I mean, you saw it from behind Velvenus, but they choppy'd his pee-pee. It was later revealed. Velvenus said some kayfabe thing about, oh, it was cold, so there was shrinkage, so they missed. It's still one of those things you go back and you watch it, or even if you just hear about it, it's crazy because if anything like this were done today, like even close, it would have to be with main event people. Like this would be a big thing. Kai and Tai was a joke cruiserweight team, and Val Venus was at best Intercontinental Champion.
Don't you hate when you go to work and your penis gets cut off? Shit.
This is probably one of the few things that keeps Val Venus relevancy besides his obnoxious tirades on Twitter. But yeah, this is one of those crazy moments. Another crazy moment related to sex is so Mark Henry and Mae Young, they loved each other. Mm-hmm. And Mae Young got pregnant. And Mae Young gave birth to a hand. My favorite part of this segment, I don't know if you've watched it recently, is when Pat Patterson tells everyone to give Mae Young a hand after the kid's been born. There's been really no explanation as to why it was a hand, but it was all gooey and goopy and disgusting. I'm pretty sure, was it Mark Henry? No, Gerald Briscoe. Gerald Briscoe started throwing up because of the hand, because I guess he doesn't like foul things. The hand came back. I don't know if you remember. Yeah. Forget which anniversary it was, but it was a big hand.
That was
Yep. So
in 1000.
Yeah. So in kayfabe, Mae Young, a former original women's wrestler from the 40s, had a baby with world's strongest man, Mark Henry, when he was sexual chocolate, and it's a hand.
Well, she also has a second son. I don't know if you knew that.
I just knew of the hand.
She had the New Year's baby.
Oh.
On the eve before 2013.
I bet you. Who did?
Mae Young. On New Year's Eve.
New Year's baby.
New Year's 2012. She had Scared to Be with Child again. I think it was just Hornswoggle, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my god. But moving on from two.
I'm saying all that was deja vu. I feel like I just went through that a couple weeks ago.
But moving on from two very Attitude Era moments, very negative. I'd say negative. We get to a positive. After WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels, of course, loses to Stone Cold. Triple H comes out and he says he's rebuilding DX. And, you know, when you're rebuilding a team like that, you look to friends, you look to family, you look to blood, you look to the clique. And that is when Sean Waltman re-debuted for the WWE. Came out as X-Pac. Told Hulk Hogan that he sucks. Told Eric Bischoff that he couldn't cut the mustard. And that if Kevin Nash and Scott Hall weren't locked into such contracts, they'd be up there with him. This was, I think, one of the more impactful jumps from WCW to WWE. Before this, after the Monday Night Wars had started, Mark Merrow made the jump. Didn't really do much. Jeff Jarrett came back. His push was instantly fizzled out by Stone Cold. But X-Pac was, I think, the first big one, and that revitalized DX. Definitely helps WWE in the ratings. It was good because you had a couple mid-card feuding stables, the DX and the Nation, and then you eventually got the Ministry and the Corporation, and it was real. It was a good time in the business. And I think X-Pac's debut gets looked over a lot for some moments that we'll talk about later, especially DX related.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a big moment, a cool moment. And it's always one of those fun ones to go back and watch. Another, just another Click member up there with Shawn Michaels leaving. So then you essentially had Nash and Hall versus Triple H and X-Pac. And
You don't ever want to be the X-Pac of your friend group.
No.
No.
No, you don't want to be the X-Pac. X-Pac, cool guy though. We met him at Astronomicon.
Yeah,
Fun guy.
Yeah, we love X-Pac.
Another big return.
We had to
I guess
remind
you
him
should
that he
say.
won the European title.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
But another big return that happened on Monday Night Raw. Again, the night after WrestleMania. John Cena was out, and he wanted to fight The Rock. And all of a sudden, Brock Lesnar's music hit. After being away from the WWE, I think it had been 2012, so 8 years at that point, Brock Lesnar was back. And he instantly gave Cena an F5, and it set up for a match with Cena at Extreme Rules. Brock lost. LOL, John Cena wins. And then he had those matches with Triple H, which were questionable. Luckily, Brock regained some steam, sent Cena to Suplex City, and, the rest was there. Unfortunately, I guess for lack of a better term, Brock pissed in the wind, and now he's gone from the company.
Okay.
But this was a big moment. There hadn't been, besides The Rock returning, there hadn't been a big return like that in quite some time, and it almost this started the set off of the Raw after Mania. To me, Brock's return, because the next year, who's gonna come out, who's gonna be here, and Brock Lesnar, it's one of those never say never moments with how he left. No one thought he'd be back. Especially with the career he had in UFC, he could retire then.
Yeah. Even today, some people, I wouldn't consider myself one of them, are longing for his return. Every big show.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Somebody always puts up a fake W.com page of oh look, Brock Lesnar's back on the website. Shut up.
Oh yeah. Or when they did that cold open for the Netflix Raw, Brock was in it twice, and that's people that means he's gonna be there. He is not. He's just a impactful figure. It was, big moments. He wasn't a mainstay of Raw, but he was a mainstay of the company for quite some time. I think if he were to come back now, some people might lose their smile. Just like Shawn Michaels did. A lot of people, a lot of current fans, maybe some not marquee fans, will associate Shawn Michaels kind of the happy-go-lucky NXT commissioner. Maybe, the old guy, depending on how long they've watched, the good Christian. In the 90s, he's kind of a bad boy.
What?
He vacated titles on more than one occasion. And this is probably the most memorable one. He said he lost his smile. And he went away for a whole, 6 months, if that?
Not even.
Yeah, this was the first of his going aways. This is a moment that definitely gets memed, especially at the end of his career, like that 2004 to 2008 range. If you were feuding with Shawn Michaels, you'd, what, Shawn, did you lose your smile? And even on NXT, sometimes if a character or wrestler goes backstage and talks to him, that's what Sean, did that make you lose your smile? It's gonna follow him.
Yeah, so I guess so he faked an injury.
Yes. Was this the concussion one?
No, his knee.
Okay, okay.
He says his knee hurts. He can't wrestle. He can't drop the belt to Brett, or doesn't want to wrestle Brett anymore. No WrestleMania rematch. So he went to a doctor, I guess, and the doctor, who never, it's not like he's like a family doctor. He's not like an athletic doctor.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't really know the difference between like sports like injuries and regular injuries. I guess he kind of said like something like you should never wrestle again, or like you'll lose like your knee or something. Like you have to cut off your leg. So I guess Sean was kind of scared, but then he went to like an actual doctor and said that he was fine. But
Okay.
he kind of just went with that. So he semi-faked it, but he was probably okay. But yeah, he just held out long enough so we didn't have to jab the Brett, and that kind of led to Montreal. Because Bret Hart never forgot. Bret Hart does not forget.
Wait.
Forget or forgive. Bret Hart does not do either of those.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about Montreal, where would they be able to find info on Montreal?
Right on our YouTube channel. So if you just go back, I don't know, a little bit. I think it's on. We have a playlist with it.
Yes, we do.
Montreal, 25 years later, a great podcast. I would say one of our best.
Yeah.
We had a good time. Lot of laughs. There's a lot. That's probably. I think I like it better than like our Chris Benoit one because it's not as serious. So I think we did a little more goofing than we normally would.
Yeah, a little bit of goofing on Bret Hart.
Yeah. Because we read some of the books that the family has written about it, and they are just hilarious. They are so full of themselves.
If you're a Bret Hart fan, maybe stay away. But if you're a Shawn Michaels fan, maybe take a listen.
Take a good listen. You know what? Maybe Bret deserved it. I don't know.
Maybe Bret screwed Bret. Another big moment in Raw history comes after the WWF beat the WCW Alliance. Vince McMahon and Kurt Angle are in the ring celebrating. Vince is going to give Kurt Angle the heavyweight championship. And all of a sudden, as they're in North Carolina, you hear the woo and you hear the Ric Flair theme. Ric Flair had not been seen since WCW closed down, and the announcers were playing it up as always, coming out and saying hi to the fans. Vince McMahon did the same thing. Oh, you're here in your hometown. Good to see you. And then Ric Flair talks about how they are now partners. And he grabs Vince and kisses him. Shane and Stephanie supposedly sold their stock in the WWE to Ric Flair. Stone Cold came out, stunned Kurt Angle. Flair gave Austin the belt. Flair and Austin had a face-off, which at the time was unheard of. But at that point, Ric Flair was back in the WWE fold. He was supposed to just be a general manager. Maybe manage clients every so often. But then, of course, Vince McMahon got him to unretire so Vince could face him. And then he fought Taker at WrestleMania. And then he started doing matches on Raw because people were hurt or people went away. Like I know he subbed in for Stone Cold on a couple of occasions when he took his ball and went home. And then Evolution happened and Flair had a career resurgence. This was big. Flair talks about it where he didn't know if the fans would remember him or care. But you can hear just the explosion for Ric Flair because a lot of people didn't know if he'd ever come back. Which is funny to think that in 2001 they didn't know if Flair would have a career, and he went on to have 7 more years in WWE, 2 in TNA, come back to WWE, show up in AEW, have a Ric Flair's last match. This was big. Besides the initial people who jumped from WCW, your Lance Storms and all that, This was like the first big WCW star to appear. And it was quite possibly, next to Sting, the biggest.
Yeah, I definitely the biggest.
It was a fun moment. It was a good moment. Ric Flair's kind of happy and healthy at that point, a little opposite of him now. And I'm sure if he returns at the Rumble, he's gonna get an opposite reaction of his return here. And that's coming from big Ric Flair fans. So Rick, if you're listening, don't sue.
I think
We don't
he
have
comes
money.
out at the Rumble. Do you think he gets booed like in the match, not just like?
Oh,
For a
dude, if he
promo?
shows up in the actual match, the fans are gonna fucking riot. If it's just a promo, that's fine. I don't think the fans will necessarily care. He'll probably get a pop, and then he'll look happy, and then he'll want to do more, and Triple H will tell him, no. And then Ric Flair will go on Twitter and complain, and yeah, we've seen this cycle. Another big hometown moment happened when Umaga did an open challenge for his Intercontinental Championship. This is when he was with Vince McMahon. Umaga was going to face anyone from the crowd, and this scrappy little Italian, Santino Marella, was picked.
Do you remember watching this live?
Yes.
I thought this was one of those things that like I bought. I was really
Yeah.
convinced that like
So,
Armando
I was
Estrada just, like,
convinced.
picked a random guy from the crowd to fight. I was like, oh my god! At first, I was like, I don't know if I could go to like a wrestling show ever again. Like, what if that happens to me? I get beat up by Umaga.
So I was convinced until my dad was watching it with me. And he goes, well, you know, that's fucking fake. And I remember like looking at him, and I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, so they're just gonna randomly pick the guy that's got some muscle definition from the crowd, and then he's gonna go in and he's like, because wrestling's fake, so this guy's gonna go in and know what to do, or they're just gonna have Umaga beat him up. No, something's going on here. And Bobby Lashley came out, helped Santino win the Intercontinental title, and from there, Santino's wrestling career spawned. Tag team champion with Kozlov, multiple-time Intercontinental champion. He introduced the Cobra. He's currently on TNA as a general manager. It's kind of funny that he ended up having a career after this, because if you remember, Jim Cornette slapped him when he was down in OVW because the Boogeyman debuted and Santino laughed at him. Well, I'm going to assume this is kind of a slap to Cornette's face, having him debut here. But, interesting moment nonetheless. And like I said, this spawned a career. This is one of those moments that they always show for shocking debuts or shocking championship changes. And this a big Raw moment, and this helped continue the feud between the Boss and Bobby Lashley. Now, another big return for Monday Night Raw was the night after WrestleMania 30. We saw the Ultimate Warrior make his Monday Night Raw re-debut for the first time since the late 90s. The first time after Vince and Warrior had made up. And this was a big moment. He came out, he had the Warrior jacket on, he was going to cut a promo in the ring, and it had been years since he'd done anything like this. He put on a Ultimate Warrior mask, and he started talking about how every Warrior's heart beats one last Warrior beat. Very good promo, very good reintroduction to the WWE landscape. There was rumors that he perhaps was going to do a return to fold, maybe manage someone. People were hoping on the internet that he was going to have one more match. The last time he wrestled was about 2000, I want to say 2008. He fought Orlando Jordan down in South America. But this ended up not happening as the Ultimate Warrior passed away. I believe it was the following morning. And this sent just ripples through the wrestling community, especially because he had just done that ominous promo in the ring. Nothing before had been done like that. Nothing has been done since. And it's just one of those moments that you couldn't believe as it was happening. And then to read, like I said, the next day that he had gone, the big portion of the speech is, as I said, every man's heart one day beats its final beat, his lungs breathe their final breath, and if what the man did in his life makes the blood pulse through the body of others, makes them believe deeper in something larger than life, then his essence, his spirit will be immortalized. I believe it is because of this speech and then what happened after that kind of kept the Warrior name going. You see him on a lot of merchandise. There's been numerous Ultimate Warrior figures. They have the Warrior Award. And it's crazy because, you know, all these people end up getting hate, right? Like your Hulk Hogan's, your Ric Flair's. And I know what they did were different, but a lot of people kind of glaze over what Warrior did in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Some of the things he said, some of the allegations, but because of this, he's put in that upper echelon. You always see him with Macho Man Randy Savage items. You always see them with Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper. It's just, it makes you wonder. There's always that what if. If he would have lived longer, would he be viewed as a villain like Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan? World will never know. It was a big moment, and it's just one of those. Again, you see it on compilations all the time of the Ultimate Warrior's return to Raw. I think it would have been cool for him to be a not active wrestler, maybe a part-time one, maybe have a Royal Rumble appearance, maybe do a face-off with Ryback, who's with the company at the time. I think it would have been very cool. It would have been good for business, but, you know, we never got to see that moment. On the lighter side of Monday Night Raw, as it began, Bobby Heenan was not allowed into the building. The commissioner, the president, was Gorilla Monsoon, and of course Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan were partners on commentary. They went hand in hand with each other. Peanut butter and jelly. Bobby Heenan would say a quip about a baby face. Gorilla would tell him to stop it. Bobby Heenan would talk positively about the heels, and Gorilla would talk about having to slap him, that kind of thing. Bobby Heenan dressed up in numerous costumes to get into Monday Night Raw, and eventually Bobby Heenan would make it into Raw, but as things go, he ended up having a final Monday Night Raw before going to WCW. And in that, Gorilla Monsoon came out and escorted Bobby Heenan out of the building. So the last moment that we had of Bobby Heenan on WWE TV for years, he got to be partnered with Gorilla Monsoon. Bobby Heenan wasn't the only announcer at the time who left and sent ripples through Monday Night Raw. Of course, I'm referencing when Macho Man Randy Savage departed for WCW. This is the first time that I can remember Vince acknowledging somebody leaving. He brought up how Randy Savage was not there, how he had left, and you could tell he was choked up about it. The more that I've looked into it, the more that I've read about it, Vince considered Macho Man to be in his inner circle, even more so than Hulk Hogan. I think he is kind of gearing Savage up to be another Gorilla Monsoon for him, who was a wrestler, a commentator, and then someone that he could throw in part-time when needed, someone that the fans would still recognize and love. But in doing so, Randy Savage ended up, as I said, breaking Vince's heart. And that's why Vince may have taken his anger out a little more on Savage than others.
Do you feel bad though for Vince for getting his heart broken?
Not now. Then at the moment, yeah, because it was different. You didn't see Vince act like that.
He's a small business owner back then.
Yeah. But But Savage going, Savage leaving, and like I said, the bigger moment is just it getting announced because you didn't have that all that often.
Yeah.
A big moment, which I'm sure you loved because you talk about how it helped get you back into wrestling, or at least was the beginning of it, is when The Rock returned. Not one of the numerous times after he went to Hollywood, but that big moment when he returned to be the WrestleMania guest host.
Yeah, because I remember, what was that, 2010? Ish.
Let me see. Let me see.
WrestleMania 27. So probably
Yeah.
January of 10. I wasn't on Reddit yet, I don't think. So I don't remember where I seen it. I remember seeing like a rumor that there was going to be like a big guest host for Mania that year. And I remember like The Rock was mentioned.
Yep.
And then I think Justin Bieber was the other one. It was like supposed to be somebody big. So I think that was like one of the first times I tuned in to watch. And then I didn't really watch it after that. I remember looking up the results of the Mania as it happened that year. I didn't buy it. And then obviously the Punk Piper promo happened, which I think we're going to talk about soon.
Yes.
Unless you already talked about it while I was gone. But,
Nope.
Yeah, that's kind of how it happened. Yeah, so that's my favorite Rock return, I would say.
Yeah, it was February 15th, 2011. And like you said, it was one of those things where they hyped up a lot of people. Rock and Bieber were the big two, but then they also mentioned how it could have been, Undertaker's last Mania is an active competitor, and they talked about Undertaker hosting. Talked about Austin coming back and host. It's one of those, and Hogan, like anyone that could. That the list was miles long, and then I remember when they announced the host, they had all the lightning bolts, and that's I'm like, oh, they're doing something with Undertaker, and then the Rock's music hit, and he came out, and that was the first time he did the Rock's Come Home. Said he's gonna stay home. We've now learned that means he'll come back within a year or so.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he'll stay as active, but yeah, no, it was big. And then from there on, he hosted. He had the Cena feud. Went away for a little bit again. Came back. What up?
I think The Rock will always be around now.
Yeah.
With his stake in the company, so
Well,
I think
I
it was
saw
a
something that made sense.
once a year type deal. He'll probably show up in all the big time stuff. I'm sure he'll be at all the Manias.
Oh yeah, it'll probably be like that time from when he returned to what was it, like WrestleMania 33, where each Mania he'd make some sort of appearance.
Yeah.
And then he'll clown on some people, and yeah. Now it's not just the Rock's not the only big star from the Attitude Era we'll talk about. Obviously, his former tag team championship partner, Mankind. Yes, he debuted on Raw, but I think Mankind's biggest Raw moment was the interview with Jim Ross. It gave more depth to the character of Mankind. Mankind actually jumped Jim Ross because of it, and when he snapped, I think without these interviews, Mankind wouldn't have been as well regarded by the fans, but it allowed Mick to truly show character work. Before this, he did Cactus Jack, which is just a hardcore brawler. He did Dude Love, which, I mean, it's a fine gimmick, but he didn't really do character work. Mankind, you got to dive into the psyche. And these interviews, they tried to do them with other people. With I know one example is Goldust, but this was the best one that Jim Ross did. They tried to recapture it years later when Kane unmasked, but nothing stands the test of time as these interviews. And I think this is even better than The Rock, This Is Your Life, for a Mick Foley Monday Night Raw moment. And I mentioned Kane unmasking, and of course, before the unmasking, we had to talk about it at some point. the most infamous Kane moment in Monday Night Raw. Katie Vick.
Yikes. Yeah, where to even begin there?
So, Kane had a friend, Katie Vick, in kayfabe, and Triple H said that Kane assaulted her dead body. And he didn't just say it. I don't remember if it was the same week or not, but Triple H produced quote-unquote video of Triple H in a Kane mask and a red Kane shirt climbing into a casket with a mannequin doll. And I'll just say make some noises, say some phrases. Definitely a odd moment. Definitely, I'd say it's on most people's most infamous, worst Raw moment.
Didn't he say he has a good line? That was kind of funny. Did he say something like, "I fucked your brains out" or something?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, good old Hunter. Good old Hunter. This is one of those segments that I'm sure was made just for Vince. Especially to have his son-in-law do that right around the time that he was marrying his daughter. So that's always fun. But yeah, Katie Vick is usually on people's worst list. At the time when Kane was hot, like this and his debut is when Kane was at his peak, his hottest. These two eras, and this kind of stalled things. Can't say I loved it. I can obviously remember it. It's one of those, I questioned what was happening, and I forget who said, but it's like, oh, he's wrestling her, and it's like, oh, okay. And in my head, I'm like, well, it's in a casket. Maybe it's because, Kane's Undertaker's brother. Little did I know. And then going from what some say is the most infamous, the worst moment, to what I think is the most overrated moment, what some say is the best moment, that damn DX invasion of WCW.
The turning point of the Monday Night War.
Not
Mankind winning the title.
No.
Not Stone Cold's popularity. This single-handedly.
Yeah.
Turned the tides of the Monday Night War. Because it showed WCW was scared, you see.
This is shown on every Monday Night War documentary, every Monday Night War discussion, as Triple H, Road Dogg, and Shawn Michaels have taken more power in WWE. It gets more and more regarded as like God's gift to Earth.
They always say like they rode a tank.
Yeah, it was an army Jeep.
Jeep.
Yeah, I think people are getting their wires crossed because at Raw 1000, they showed up on a tank, but yeah, it's fine. It's fun. If you've seen the clip, then Road Dogg got to get some verbal jabs in, and everyone was there. So that way, if they had to fight, but it was fine. Like you said, there's so many other moments that were turning point. Hell, even Chris Jericho's debut is more of a turning point than that, and it happened years later. But, it's a Raw list. We had to talk about it. We got it out of the way. Now, one that I don't think gets enough credit is Pillman has a gun.
I like this one. Brian
Pillman was feuding with Stone Cold. Stone Cold broke into his house, which I think this is one of the times it makes sense. It always confuses me when, like, say, Edge shows up at John Cena's dad's house. How do you know where he lives? Now, Randy Orton and Triple H showing up at their houses, yeah, they travel together. Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, yeah. This one, perfect sense. Stone Cold and Brian Pillman were friends for years. He shows up, and I believe they did segments where they were at Pillman's house, and he was waiting for Austin. And Austin showed up, and Pillman pulled a gun, and then they did some visual edits, and you heard a gunshot. And then the WWE had to apologize.
Yeah.
This is probably the biggest thing Pillman did in his WWE run. It's probably the thing he's most associated with. And I'm glad it didn't like stall anything in Stone Cold's rise. Because at certain eras in WWE, like even in the 2000s, depending on Vince's mood, he could have punished them both, even though he is the one that came up with it.
Yeah, it was his idea, but their fault.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those. I remember the 10th anniversary of Raw, the 15th anniversary of Raw, the episodic shows, like the large ones. This always gets shown. This always gets talked about.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it's one of the first times they really pushed the envelope. And one of the times that they got their little hand slapped. Now we go from Austin almost getting shot to Dr. Austin getting paged. Another favorite moment in Raw histories is when Vince McMahon was in the hospital. Not only did Mankind show up with Mr. Sacco for the first time, but Stone Cold showed up, and it's another moment that gets shown in clips over and over and over. He hits Vince in the head with a bedpan. And then he punches Vince over and over, and Vince is in the bed. He's flailing. He's, ah! But Austin just keeps punching and hitting. It's one of those moments that before everything that came out about Vince, and he got blackballed, he got thrown away from the company, this was usually the clip used to show him and Austin. This or the time that Austin made Vince piss his pants. It's usually these two. To be able to watch this live probably would have been hilarious.
I would have laughed my ass off.
Yeah, I mean, because Vince was a character. He knew what to do, and Austin knew how to make Vince look like a dumbass. Yeah, it was just a good time. And like I said, on the flip side, we also saw the debut of Mr. Sacco in the hospital. And Vince's delivery of "get that damn sock out of my face" is just gold. This was a great segment. I would love to know who produced this. I could see Vince doing it himself, but yeah, good moments all in all. And now we'll jump a little bit into the future here. We talked about it before the show. There's been numerous WWE drafts. 3 of them actually hold importance. The very first one, the second draft, quote unquote, which is a lottery draft. Triple H got drafted to SmackDown. Paul Heyman got drafted to Raw and quit. And then we had the third draft, which I think is the biggest of all time. We saw Randy Orton get drafted to SmackDown so he could continue his feud with The Undertaker. We saw Batista get drafted to SmackDown so they could finally have a heavyweight championship. I believe... I'm trying to think. We saw Kurt Angle get drafted to Raw. It seemed like everyone... Christian got drafted to SmackDown. It seemed like every draft pick was important.
Yeah.
At least that's how I remember it. Like, there wasn't a wasted one.
Because there was only a very few. I
think
10.
it was a month's worth. I think it was like 4 weeks, and the last week there was 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cena got drafted to SmackDown. Benoit to Raw. Kurt Angle to Raw. Or Chris Benoit to SmackDown.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle to Raw. Randy Orton to SmackDown. Carlito to Raw. Muhammad Hassan and Daivari to SmackDown. Big Show and RVD to Raw. Then Christian and Batista to SmackDown.
These were all huge. As I said, Batista, SmackDown got a world title. This was Christian went to SmackDown, and it was shortly before his time in the company was over. He got to show some more main event chops. RVD going to Raw. This was a big moment for him because this, I think, really kickstarted his main event run. Big Show going to Raw. He got to become a villain again. Muhammad Hassan went to SmackDown and died. Carlito won his first Intercontinental Championship, his debut on Raw. And like I said, Angle, Orton, and then even Benoit going to SmackDown. But the moment we're talking about is, of course, the John Cena draft. Very first pick, the heavyweight champion showing up to Raw. You couldn't have wrote it better. And it was such a big moment. And you've talked about being a kid. As a kid, you didn't know what was going to happen because you couldn't like just look at it and go, "Oh, that means Batista's going to SmackDown." At the time, I mean, they had Cena and Batista as heavyweight champions on the same show for about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the eruption he got, and then when you close your eyes, you can see it when it's announced he's drafted. He comes out, and from there on, Big Match John ruled the Monday Night Raw landscape for years. He became the guy, and like I said, for being the number one pick, it's huge. It shows the thought put into the draft. It shows how much stock John Cena held. Nothing's better at the time. What a moment. Now then, another Monday Night Raw debut that had a lot of stock at time, but kind of fizzled out. It was when Goldberg debuted. Another Raw after Mania. He was being hyped. And after WrestleMania 19, of course, The Rock beat Stone Cold. And as The Rock said in his promo, The Rock had done it all. He beat Austin. He'd beat Rock. He'd beat Triple H. He'd held heavyweight championships. There was nothing left for The Rock, so it was time to go home. And then Goldberg's music hit. And they did probably one of the most badass Goldberg entrances where he had the Harley Davidson jacket and it showed him walking through the back. Came through the sparklers and smoke. And then grabbed the mic and told The Rock, "Hi, Rock, you're next." And speared him, and The Rock sold it like $1 million. This led to Goldberg and Rock fighting at Backlash. And really, that was the last of The Rock's full-time WWE run. Because he stayed on TV for that little bit from Mania to Backlash. Goldberg, of course, had a time that first year. They definitely, I know a lot of people, I know it's cool to hate Goldberg. I like Goldberg. They definitely misused him in that run. I know he had some backstage issues, and he thought he was bigger than he was. But I mean, damn, he carried WCW on his back for like 2 years. Give the man some credit. Yeah, they made him look like a fool, and then he left after a year. But fret not. He came back. All those years later, he was the cover, or one of the, not covered athletes. He was the big legend character for 2K that year. And he was going to fight Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. He came out and announced it. He said, doing this so his son could watch him wrestle. And a lot of people thought it'd just be a throwaway. I know when it was happening, we both talked about it. We kind of thought he was just going to be fed to Brock.
Yeah.
Another notch. Brock gets his win back. And it was so cool to see Goldberg spear him a couple times, hit the jackhammer and win. So unexpected. Probably still in like the top 5 unexpected endings of a match, I would say. And because of his reaction, or the crowd's reaction to him, Goldberg ended up coming back for more matches. He won the Universal Championship twice. Yay. He main evented WrestleMania that one time. No, I guess not main evented, but he defended the title twice. Yay. He took the title off The Fiend and Kevin Owens. Yay. But that re-debut, that was a very fun, very good moment. No one really knew what to expect since, Warrior had done it. And then, was Sting before that, or was Sting after that? Sting was before that. Sting had done it, so now it's Goldberg. She really didn't know what to expect. I didn't hate it. People now like to act cool and say they hated it. I thought it was fun. And then, let's see. Another moment that I think is fun, and now people look back and like to poo-poo on, is the silent challenge.
Oh.
I don't know if you remember with Undertaker and Triple H. They challenged each other to WrestleMania without saying a word.
Oh, okay. For me, you said the silent challenge. I was like, was it like a beat the clock type challenge, or like the wrestlers had to wrestle without saying a word? I'm like, I don't remember this.
Yeah, no, it was called the Silent Challenge. And Undertaker came out, and this was the whole 2/21/11 thing, which for those that don't remember, it was teased for weeks that it was going to be Sting. And they filmed it so that way if they got Sting, it would work. They showed the black jacket, they showed the black boots, a cabin with rainstorm, because apparently Sting's associated with like snow and rainstorms for some reason.
Right.
I get the rain because the crow, but whatever. And then my favorite part of it is they panned up, and it was the Undertaker. The cabin door opened, and there he was. So he came out. He was gonna challenge someone, do something, because this was after he retired Shawn Michaels. We hadn't seen Taker in a year. And when he was about to speak, Triple H came out. And they stood nose to nose, said nothing to each other, and they looked at the WrestleMania sign. Which goes to show that some matches don't need a championship. And some matches don't even need words. This was perfect. They, of course, fought the year after as well. But I think their first match was the best. You take away Hell in a Cell and you take away Shawn Michaels, the second match doesn't have a whole lot.
It was I liked it.
I liked the second match, but that first match I thought was better. And it could just be because of the nostalgia from that silent challenge. Another fun moment that sent shockwaves through the WWE, didn't end up having as much historical relevance as the silent challenge, was the Nexus debut. That shit was crazy. They tore apart the ring. They tore apart the announce tables.
Choked Justin Roberts.
Yeah. Yeah, Bryan Danielson choked out Justin Roberts. It got him... People say kayfabe fired now, but I thought he actually had heat for it. For a split second. I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember there being actual heat on him for a minute. It, of course, was the original Nexus group, which you had Wade Barrett, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, Skip Sheffield, who became Ryback, Michael Tarver, David Otunga, Darren Young, and Bryan Danielson. This wasn't the only time they destroy the Raw set and wreak havoc. They did it for quite a long time until Cena wins, LOL. But this first moment, this was huge. You hadn't seen anything like it in quite a long time, and this wasn't your typical invasion. Usually when Raw got invaded, it would be by, whether it be the NWA, the NWO, ECW, WCW, recognizable names. Having all of these former NXT talent come out and do this, people were excited on where it was going to go. I was excited. And then, as I said, Cena wins. LOL. We hinted at it earlier. Cena always wins. We hinted at it earlier. Kane's unmasking took place on Monday Night Raw. Kane disappeared for a little bit and then came back about 2002. He had half a mask on at this time. And he rocked that half a mask for a couple of years until he put the mask on the line against Triple H. He lost to Triple H just like he'd lost numerous times before. Lost the Intercontinental title. And then Kane pulled his mask off. And for years we were told there's burn markings. He took his mask off and he had tufts of hair on the back of his head. So the hair on his mask was fake. And he had soot on his face. It was later revealed that his scars were psychological. And the hair, I've read recently, he did have long hair until that point, and then they told him what they wanted to do, and being a good WWE boy, he did it. And then he called his wife and warned her before it came on TV.
What a good guy.
After that, Kane started wreaking havoc in the company. He took out Eric Bischoff, Linda McMahon, his former tag partner Rob Van Dam. Probably for, I want to say about 3 months, he came out being chained up and with a towel on his head. Just because he snapped again. He set Jim Ross on fire when Jim Ross interviewed him. This is probably the scariest the Kane character had been in a long time, and it was all due to that mask being removed. And everyone told him he didn't have to do it, or like Rob Van Dam told him you don't have to do it, but he did it because he said the mask was holding him back. Little did Kane know that about 8 years later he'd be putting that sucker back on. Not that same mask, but an even worse looking one. A all red one. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if he took it off, he was Corporate Kane, which I guess now we'd call him what, Governor Kane?
Mayor Kane.
Yeah, Mayor Kane. Yeah, I don't want to give him too much credit. Yeah, Mayor.
Glenn Jacobs.
Yeah, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, but he puts that mask back on because he's done it at a couple press events. He's Kane again.
He'll body slam the liberals to a table.
Yeah, he will. He and Undertaker won. They beat Batista and Mick Foley. They won. You know who else put people through tables?
A lot of people.
The Shield.
Oh yeah.
You know, a big moment that made people pretty emotional actually was when Seth Rollins turned on the Shield. The Shield had recently broke off from the Authority. And, you know, they were kind of running roughshod. They were proving that they were good guys, good people. They fought Evolution. They're fighting the Authority brought Evolution back. Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista. Batista was already pissed off because he was supposed to win a heavyweight title, but because so many people got behind the Yes movement, went to Daniel Bryan. So Batista was supposed to come back, main event Mania, win a title, and he main evented Mania. Didn't win a title, and then got put in tag team matches. They were good matches, but that Raw after Batista quit, Triple H said there's a plan B. I remember a lot of people thought that meant Sheamus was getting added. I don't remember where that started from, except Sheamus and Triple H worked out together, but people really wanted it to be Sheamus. And then the Shield were in the ring, and when Triple H said there's a plan B, Seth Rollins hit Roman Reigns in the back with a chair. A moment we saw recreated at this year's Mania, except with Roman and Seth. The Shield breakup.
And they said there's no
for a long time
storytelling in wrestling anymore.
Yeah. The Shield breakup until the New Day with Big E, I think, was the biggest breakup on WWE TV in quite some time. Like, it was always referenced. And even though Moxley's in AEW, they still frame the camera just enough. The only difference now is we don't get to see Ambrose's shocked face. This, of course, sent the Shield in all different directions, all winning heavyweight titles. They would reunite on Monday Night Raw a couple of times. They would have to split when Moxley left, and then when Roman Reigns, Joe Anoa'i came out and announced he had cancer. But this, I think, obviously was the biggest moment, the biggest split. It's still talked about. It's still, like you said, used in storytelling. Yeah, it was just one of those you had to be theirs. Like I said, there's so much chatter online of who could join Triple H and Orton, and it turned out to be Seth Rollins. Now, it's not just all doom and gloom on Monday Night Raw. I know we talked about Kane's unmasking, Shield breakup, Nexus debut. There was some fun invasions, and I'm not talking about the WCW one. That one sucked. That was terrible. I'm talking a couple times ECW invaded.
Hey.
There was a time in the 90s when they were trying to help WWE get a ratings boost, and they started sharing talent back and forth. That was a fun time, but the one that sticks out in my head is right before the one night stand shows. And I say shows because there was always a brawl between ECW and then the heel WWE wrestlers. But one of the times they had a whole show about it, ECW versus Raw. And the moment that sticks out in my head from all of these is when they did a battle royal to see who would win, ECW or WWE. And it came down to Kurt Angle versus Big Show, and it was either Edge or Orton. Kurt Angle is representing ECW because ECW got to draft 2 WWE guys. They drafted Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam. And it was left with these guys in the Battle Royal. And then Big Show tore his shirt off. And he was an ECW guy for some fucking reason. I know in retrospect, Kurt and Big Show were going to be the veterans on ECW because they always wanted to have, some WWE guys there to kind of keep the ECW rapscallions at bay. And Big Show and Kurt were going to be the first two. Funny enough, the more I look back on it, Kurt Angle was supposed to be the WWE veteran, got really hooked on painkillers in ECW, had to leave. Big Show was supposed to be the WWE veteran, ballooned in weight, didn't want to wrestle anymore, had to leave.
We've all been there, man.
Chris Benoit was supposed to be the WWE veteran. We know what happened there. So after losing 3 of their top guys, they started sending, Finley and Chavo Guerrero and Matt Hardy, and I think they figured it out. The invasions, the ECW ones, there's always good content on it. There's always... And Jerry Lawler always seems to get involved. Not really sure why. He just hates extremely crappy wrestling. And it's just funny to think that there was an invasion in the 90s, in the 2000s, and Lawler got choked out by Taz at both of them. And now, going from one rival show of WWE to another, when Eric Bischoff got hired as the Raw GM. I mentioned earlier about Ric Flair having 50-50. Rick was the Raw GM. Vince was the SmackDown GM. They were getting Vince off TV, for like a month. And then they were getting Flair into a wrestling role, so they needed GMs. Stephanie McMahon was the SmackDown one. Eric Bischoff became the Monday Night Raw one. And this was huge, because Vince and Bischoff were at each other's throats for years. And Bischoff came in. He had that snazzy entrance theme. And the whole show, he was, talking to the WCW guys. No one really wanted to deal with him. I've read in Ric Flair's books that he wanted to punch Bischoff. I know Booker T was not happy he was there. Nash wasn't happy he was there. Just handfuls of people. Besides Teddy Long, I believe he became one of the longest reigning general managers in WWE history. He was always a heel on Raw. And always just a smart ass. But he had some big moments. Bringing Stone Cold back when he got fired and put into the dumpster or the garbage truck by John Cena. Some of the quote-unquote trades he did, bringing some of the talent to Raw that he did. Yeah, this moment was it was unheard of, because it was the same night that Vince McMahon said the NWO, he played their music and he said it's the last time you'll hear from them because of all the injuries and firings. So it's just interesting that the death of the NWO goes hand in hand with the rebirth of Eric Bischoff. Now, Bischoff wasn't the only one to be given a Raw rebirth. Mentioned him earlier, Matt Hardy. Man, we've talked about it on a podcast. He doesn't have a lot of luck in wrestling. And one of those moments he didn't have a lot of luck was when it turned out his longtime girlfriend Lita was cheating on him with Edge. Matt Hardy was released, but there was so much fan backlash they brought him back. And some of the cooler Monday Night Raw moments is when he would just show up and beat the shit out of Edge backstage in the ring.
Crazy X's, am I right?
Yeah, Matt Hardy will not die. Matt Hardy then lost the feud to Edge and lost a match that got him banned from Raw. But you know, his re-debut was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Fun time. Now we're gonna go from something like that with some real life drama to something that at the time didn't have real life drama. Remember when X-Pac did blackface and came out as Mizark Henry?
Yes.
When DX mocked the nation, because we had the Croc. Triple H was the Croc. He did his best Rock impression. Also blackface. Let's see. Road Dogg was D'Lo Brown.
How come these aren't
he
shown in
shaked
the promo packages?
Yeah. He shaked his head and he did the whole D'Lo stick. Let me see who everyone was. I know that they brought in Jason Sensation, and he was Owen Hart. That was a big moment. Oh yeah, Billy Gunn was Godfather. Very much in blackface. Yeah, not the best look. Especially as I said earlier, Triple H and Road Dogg both higher ups now in the WWE. Yeah, this wasn't the first time, or the only time I should say, that Triple H mocked The Rock. He also did it when he was with the corporation, but wasn't not as much blackface there. This is a very infamous moment now. People tend to compare this to when Kevin Nash mocked Arn Anderson's retirement, the My Spot thing. I love the Four Horsemen. I love Arn Anderson. These are not comparable. Yeah, Arn Anderson had to retire from wrestling. Yeah, X-Pac made Ric Flair look like a bitch. Yeah, Kevin Nash. Oh, My Spot. There's 4 counts of blackface here. This was the 90s. This was 98. Before anyone tries to tell me that that's okay, you're an idiot.
People say they're just so soft.
Well,
you can't take a joke, though, again? Just a joke. Just have a good time.
Yeah. I don't know if there's ever been like an official apology for this.
It probably never will be. It never happened.
Yeah, it never happened. But remember. Another moment that involves Triple H and some face paint. Seth Rollins was getting a statue one night on Monday Night Raw. This is when he was deep into the Authority era.
I remember this.
And he was going to get a statue because that's what they do. They don't highlight it as.
Was this a...
Yes. Yep. Yeah. They don't highlight this as much anymore, like the statues. But Dusty got one, Bruno's gotten one, Andre got one. Seth Rollins was getting one because he was the man. And they pulled up. I don't remember if a curtain dropped or they pulled up a box or what. But instead of there being that statue, it was Sting. We hadn't seen Sting in quite some time since he was the Vigilante, if I remember, at Survivor Series. And this started Sting wrestling for the WWE again. I guess we saw him at Mania. My mistake. We saw him at Mania, and then we didn't see him. This happened, and, Sting teamed up with Randy Orton to fight Big Show and Seth Rollins. Fun match. Nothing crazy. And then he was going to fight Seth Rollins, Night of Champions. For the heavyweight championship. Sting for the WWE championship. It's crazy even thinking it. And I still say if he wouldn't have gotten hurt there, there's a chance they might have slapped it on him for like a month.
Maybe.
Not at that show, but maybe like later on. Maybe he'd win it at a Raw and then lose at the next pay-per-view. So maybe just a week. but something. But instead, and I remember because this is one of the times I was in the hospital. I was watching the show on my tablet. I was already upset because they didn't have the Dudleys win the titles. Why bring them back and change history so that way they can only have 24 title wins and not give them their 25th? Stupid. I was half asleep. I was a little bit on the drugs they were pumping in me, and I like dozed off, looked up, and I woke up as Sting was when he was running off the ropes and it kind of fell. And I remember being like, "Oh man, what did I miss?" And this is one of those times where they started calling Seth Rollins unsafe, right? Because he quote unquote injured Finn Balor. And then now he quote unquote injured Sting. Sting had to retire. Sting went in the Hall of Fame. Went to AEW. Had a great career resurgence. But this wasn't even his WWE debut. This was just a Raw debut. It was phenomenal, and you could tell he'd been there for a while because I remember some of his face paint was gone, like on his forehead.
Yeah, he was sweating. He was sweating under his
Oh yeah, he's an old man. What do you expect?
So, speaking of him, did you see that he trademarked "Old Man Sting"?
Did he really?
Yeah, that's a new Sting-owned trademark.
That's phenomenal. Something Sting wouldn't have liked was when the Undertaker was deep into his Ministry of Darkness gimmick. I guess there's two that go hand in hand with this. One of them, he abducted Stephanie McMahon and tried to marry her. He had her on his symbol, and it was a very rapey vibe, I will say. She was saying that she didn't want to do this. Austin came out and made the save. Another Raw, he put Stone Cold on his symbol and raised him up in. A lot of people will say it's not, but it was a crucifixion. It was on his symbol, but he was crucified. Apparently, it wasn't bad enough to make Kurt Angle never come wrestle for them, like ECW's. But yeah, this was still one of those moments where you're like, yikes. Undertaker got away with a lot, didn't he? Especially choking. Choking's not the word. He hung the Big Boss Man in the Hell in a Cell. Undertaker was a devious little guy.
He's up to no good.
He is up to no good. You could almost call him a bad guy. But the bad guy was, of course, Razor Ramon. And although he had stints with the WWE and multiple stints with WCW and NWA, a clip that was commonly shown, especially when he was kind of on the outs with WWE, it's not mentioned as much, I've noticed, since he came back and went in the Hall of Fame. But was the time that the 1-2-3 Kid, at the time he was the Lightning Kid, upset him and pinned him. And then from then on, that's when Sean Waltman started being on TV regularly, became the 1-2-3 Kid. It was a huge moment.
A creative name.
Yeah, Razor Ramon looked like a fool, but it worked. And from then on, I believe it was shortly after that, Waltman joined the Clique, and as I say, the rest is history. Now, you mentioned it earlier as your big moment on Raw. So I'll let you talk about this one. I'll let you really go into it. CM Punk's pipe bomb.
Oh my God! What not to talk about it? I think everything that needs to be said about this has been said. It's one of those moments that, for me and for a lot of people, I'd say, kind of brought you back into wrestling. Kind of gave you that feeling you had when you were a kid of like, wow, I kind of actually believe this. This is kind of real, because up until then, it was all PG era shit, like John Cena doing like the Fred movie type deal every week. It was like all of a sudden, oh, John Cena wins, yay, blah 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 blah. Not really for me. Nothing really going on. The mid card kind of sucked. There was really name one good angle from 2009 to 11, right? Like the Shawn Michaels Chris Jericho match.
The Cobra?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the Cobra and Mr. Sacco met in the Royal Rumble in that era, so you better watch your P's and Q's. Let me fact check that. Let me. Oh, that was 2012. You said 2011. My mistake.
Yeah, watch your fucking mouth, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is one of those things. I remember where I was when I watched it. I was at my parents' house. You know, I was a wee little high schooler. You know, that was too cool to watch wrestling. But I flipped it on around like 10:58 p.m. on a Monday night. Watched him walk up the aisle, watched him cut it. I was like, oh shit. And I tuned in the next week, and then the week after that. Then I illegally streamed Money in the Bank on my parents' computer and broke it. And then ever since then, became a fan again. So thank you, Mr. Punk. I appreciate it. This podcast and probably me meeting Logan and a lot of things are owed to you, I'd say.
Yeah, it was a huge moment. And just some of the stuff he called out, it still even today with wrestling resonates. The hi Colt Cabana, how you doing?
I didn't even know who Colt Cabana was when he said it.
Well, it's just so funny because right. So after this pipe bomb, the next big CM Punk Mike moment was his press conference in AEW, and good old Colt Cabana was brought up again. Yeah, the pipe bomb. The only issue I have with a pipe bomb, which is not even Punk's fault, it's just whenever anyone says anything snarky or they shoot, pipe bomb. And it frustrates me because even like at the hall, when Paul Heyman was inducted into the Hall of Fame, people were saying certain clips were, oh, it's a Paul Heyman pipe bomb. No, it's called shooting. Punk's just a pipe bomb because it generally shook things up. I think pipe bomb and legend are two terms in wrestling that are used way too much. But I think CM Punk fits both.
Yeah.
Now,
my number one all-time Raw moment, I'll say. I'll plant that flag. Do you remember, before we move on, do you remember, like, after that time, like, on, like, I don't know if you were on Reddit at the time, or, like, on social media, like, people were, like, recreating, like, the pipe bomb. Like, this one kid,
yes.
he did it for his, like, speech class in high school.
Yeah.
You remember that kid? I just think, like, that shit's so funny.
It's used a lot, and it's one of those things that when Punk was with the company, they touted it as this big moment, big Raw moment, and then when he went away, you never heard about it. But now that he's back, you'll see clips on the WWE Vault and on WWE.com. And remember the pipe bomb? We remember the pipe bomb.
So I have my own little cringe moment.
Okay.
I'm sure Zion will get kicked out of this if he's listening because he's all about the cringe stuff right now. So I did this competition in high school.
Yeah.
For the Skills USA. I don't know if anybody listening knows what it is. I think it's national. I'm pretty sure. But at the state level, I won first place. I got like a gold medal, and I was gonna go on to nationals in like in Kansas City or whatever. So when I got home, the only thing I could think of was like the post I got on Twitter about it was I put the medal in my fridge like CM Punk did with the championship after Money in the Bank. So I did that. So I kept it in the fridge for like 3 days.
Jeez.
And I took a picture and posted it. I bet you if I go look hard enough, I can go find that picture.
Amazing.
I'll send it to you here on Discord. I'm pretty sure it's still on social media somewhere. I will go find it.
You know, you asked for big Raw moments from 2009 to 2011. This next one actually was 2010. It's when Bret Hart came back to the WWE. That's pretty big. Granted, it was used to combat TNA having Hogan. But I think a lot of people, I know I did at the time, thought Bret was just going to come in for this moment, probably induct someone in the WWE and call it, or WWE Hall of Fame and call it good. He had a match with Vince McMahon. At WrestleMania, he won the United States Championship from The Miz. He was the Raw GM for a little bit. Bret Hart stuck around with the WWE a lot longer than I thought he would. And then even after showing up to present the AEW Championship to the winner of the inaugural AEW Championship match, he still showed back up in WWE. And I think... I thought... I don't know, it's 50-50 on whether we'll see more Bret Hart in WWE. Because, like, Vince is gone, right? And he hates Vince. Like, that's clear. But Triple H and Shawn Michaels are now running things. So... I don't know. But yeah, that Bret debut, you didn't think it would happen. Him and Shawn Michaels shook hands. And it led to Vince kicking him in the balls and saying again, Bret screwed Bret. Another McMahon kicking the balls moment, this time more hypothetical instead of literal, is when WCW's last show. We got another Ric Flair Sting match. They did big fireworks. They showed some WWE guys in the back helping. And, you know, it was said that Vince purchased WCW, but out comes Shane McMahon onto WCW TV. This is about, what, a month? Less than a month to their WrestleMania match. And Shane did the iconic line, which I've used in a scripture lately. The contract does say McMahon, but it is Shane McMahon. And then it was supposed to be this big thing. They were supposed to have these guys come with Shane and invade the WWE. And then Goldberg said he didn't want to opt out of his Time Warner deal. And Hulk Hogan said he didn't want to opt out of his Time Warner deal. And Ric Flair said he didn't want to opt out of his Time Warner deal. And Kevin Nash didn't want to opt out of his Time Warner deal. And Scott Hall wasn't reliable without Kevin Nash. And Jeff Jarrett was hated by the WWE. And Scott Steiner and Rick Steiner didn't want to opt out of their Time Warner deal, and we got Lance Storm and DDP and Booker T. I mean, DDP wasn't even in the Alliance. Nope, so it was Lance Storm and Booker T and Mike Awesome. And then they had to bring HCW in because there wasn't enough people, even though had they just thought they could have had Jericho, Big Show, and Stone Cold be with WCW. But what do I know? What do I know? That'd make too much sense. But yeah, this was a big moment, and it gets quoted a lot. And this is usually so we talk about how the DX tank, quote unquote, was the turning point of the Monday Night Wars. People always say that this is the end of the Monday Night Wars. The end of the Monday Night Wars was when Mankind won the title, and people never tuned into WCW after that. Like, this Nitro, it was dead at this point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's your medal. What else is in your fridge? Let's do a quick rate your fridge. Is that Squirt or Mountain Dew?
It's probably my mom, so it's probably Squirt.
Oh, all right. Amy with the good choice. Love some good Squirt. We got some ketchup. We got some leftovers. Some Country Crock. Is that some asparagus there?
Yeah. Mayonnaise.
Someone's pee smells. Fred.
Coffee creamer. There's some Greek yogurt back there.
There we go.
Yeah, this is. This is what
I don't see it in there.
What?
Where's the beer?
Well, I don't know.
Probably in the beer truck. That, of course,
Stone
Cold's beer truck. Yeah, and he's going to spray it again right in Fred's mouth. That was a big Raw moment when he came out and he sprayed the ring and filled it with beer, and you really hadn't seen anything like that up to that point. Stone Cold was clearly having fun. Now, I will tell you, it's not on my list, but this isn't even my favorite Stone Cold beer moment. My favorite is when he was able to drink again. Because after all the Deborah stuff, he had to be sober. Then when he stopped getting sober, he went out and he had that beer bash on Raw. And he swam in, like, the puddle of beer. Good times. Stone Cold's a fun guy. But the beer truck, I think people associate the beer truck, the Zamboni, and the milk truck as like 3 key points in that era of wrestling. Now, I know growing up, because we both grew up obviously around the same time, big Monday Night Raw moment for us was after Edge won the heavyweight title by cashing in Money in the Bank. He and Lita had the, to date, first and only live sex WWE celebration.
Man, remember where you were when that happened?
It was definitely risque. It's been noted that Edge and Lita did not want to do it. They both, I'm pretty sure, were naked under the covers. Edge had multiple garments of clothing in his mouth. And if my memory serves me correct, Ric Flair actually interrupted it. And that led to an Edge-Ric Flair TLC match. But that often gets overshadowed by the live sex celebration. Now, this wasn't the only time that Lita was involved in a questionable angle. This fits because, of course, as you mentioned, little Thomas graced us in December. So, what else am I going to get to talk about this? Remember when Snitsky punted that fake baby? And what people forget, right? That wasn't even the worst part. So, if you go back, Kane impregnated Lita. This was after Kane won Lita from Matt Hardy. Kane impregnated Lita when she didn't want to have sex with him. This was said on TV.
Yep.
They said it was going to be a demon spawn, but Lita loved it because it was her own. Snitsky then
booted at
pushed. Well, if you remember, he pushed Kane, and Kane fell into Lita. So Lita, quote unquote, lost the baby, and this was on TV. So Lita had a miscarriage of a demon child because this Snitsky guy. And from there, I don't know what they would have done with Snitsky had this not happened. So this had to have been the plan. His gimmick was, it's not my fault. And his whole theme music was, it's not my fault. And then, yeah, the Raw moment we're talking about, he comes out with a fake baby. He holds it. It's making cooing sounds, and he's talking to Lita. And then he takes, and he punts it like he's Pat McAfee right into the crowd.
Funny.
Oh my fucking God. What a moment. That could be my top. My top one is actually ending our list, but that's up there. Because, again, right, you're a kid and you see it's a fake baby, and he punts it, and you're like, haha, fucking hilarious. But they got a lot of backlash. I mean, they were already getting backlash from the whole, like I said, the storyline went from demon rape to miscarriage to now punting a baby. This will probably be the bit this is going to be the bit YouTube's going to hear.
Yeah. And
this is going to get demonetized. But, yeah, Snitsky, what a guy. He apparently is doing, like, indie shows. He's going to be at Squared Circle Expo, right?
Should we get him to sign a baby doll?
Well, no, that'd be perfect. I wasn't even thinking that. His promo video, he says, this is Snitsky, former WWE wrestler, and it wasn't my fault. So he's still, almost 20 years later, rolling with that gimmick. I love it. Can't ask for much more.
So this is what Netflix bought. This
is what Netflix wanted, yeah, because they got all the Raws. So yeah, this is what they wanted. Two of the moments they probably actually did want was they debut and the return of the Ayatollah of rock and roll, Chris Jericho. I touched on it on our top 25 list. I don't hate Jericho. I I haven't hated Jericho. Yeah, the man's out of shape, but the man's also been wrestling for like 35 years. All right? Cut him a break.
No.
No?
No.
The only bad thing that he's done in AEW was that stupid Jericho Appreciation Society, and that's just because the members in it sucked. I'm looking at you, Jake Hager. Besides that, I've loved Jericho in AEW. But his debut, his Raw debut, they hyped it up for so long. He's the Millennium Man. The Y2K turns into Y2J. He comes out to interrupt The Rock, and his career is almost ended by The Rock. And then Jericho floundered for quite some time. If you remember, he was in the mid-card. It wasn't until he became Undisputed Champion. And then even after that, once he dropped that title, it took about another 6 years for him to really become main event relevant again. He was back in the mid-card, tag team wrestling, always losing to the heavyweight champion. But this was a huge moment, his debut. And a lot of people credit him leaving and going to WWE for the Radicals leaving and going to WWE. So think if that's the case, if Jericho hadn't have jumped, maybe the Radicals would have tried to go somewhere else. But besides his debut, I think his first return after his longest sabbatical was probably his next biggest Raw moment.
Yeah.
I still don't understand those vignettes. Like, why was it children? Why were they saying "save us"? I know, because he instantly turned it into a joke. I'm saving you from Randy Orton's boring ass promos. Ha 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 ha. He came out with a whole different look. He had a sparkly vest. He had short hair. And again, I mean, after the Orton feud, right? He was kind of in the mid card for a minute.
Yeah.
And it took him to get back to the main event scene. But a lot of people, I remember this is when I was really big into Gerwick. This is when I was reading Body Slamming Forever. This is when I was starting to look at No DQ, I believe. And then they broke the code the week of. They're like, oh, look, if you move each of these characters forward one, it's Y2J. It's like, oh. So then I remember I'd watch Raw with my grandpa, and he'd be like, who do you think it is? And I didn't want to be like, oh, the internet ruined it. So I'd be like, man, I don't know.
Could be anybody.
I don't know. Could be anyone. Yeah, Jericho's had memorable Raw returns. I think they're more memorable his return and debut on Raw than his Royal Rumble ones. Everyone always acts like that was so huge when he came out at number 2.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I remember watching that Rumble, and when Jericho came out, I didn't realize he was a surprise. I thought he was still with the company before that. So, yeah. This next one, this is a fun one. Speaking of moments Raw probably shouldn't have let happen. Remember when when WCW and WWE both wanted to have someone who had a history of drug and alcohol abuse show that on TV? WCW, of course, did it with Scott Hall. WWE did it with one half of the Road Warriors, Road Warrior Hawk. Because, of course, you have the most legendary tag team. Why just let them go out and wrestle, right? You got to split them up twice. I remember when they feuded with the New Age Outlaws, the New Age Outlaws shave half of Hawk's head. Why?
Right.
But then this time, I forgot when this was, but this is when Draws was with them. And, the first time they showed it, Hawk climbed up the turnbuckle for a doomsday device, and he fell. And then they'd have him come out to the ring, and he'd clearly be drunk. And it's kind of crazy because it was right around the same time, either before or after, they had him no-sell a pile driver from Kane. But this guy can't hold his liquor. The big moment from this came when he was drunk, and he climbed up the Titantron, and he was at the top. And it looked like Draws was trying to help him. But then Hawk fell. They were going to do a storyline where you didn't know if Draws pushed him or if he, tried to help him. They were going to have Animal, man, Hawk, I'm sorry, Hawk, and get back with him. But I'm sure you can assume why they didn't want to show someone falling from a high distance. Any guesses? Being that this was November 16th. Well, maybe I got my dates wrong. I had the right month. I know, but I mean, they still didn't want to show, a drunk man falling to his death. Oh, yep, nope. That's kind of eerie. It was exactly a year before Owen fell. But yeah, they didn't want to show that, and they kind of dropped the storyline quick. And this was one of those times where the Legion of Doom were split up, and they took them off TV, and then they brought them back, and they were a tag team again, no problem. But yeah, they showed Hawk being a drunk. That was like the last major Legion of Doom storyline before they brought him back and paired him with Sunny, and that went nowhere. So, fun times. No, I don't think anyone's had more reunions on Raw or WWE than the Legion of Doom, except Degeneration X. I can name 3 big Raws where they returned together. The one is when Shawn Michaels was starting to get back into the fold, and Eric Bischoff pitched, because this is before Shawn came back, so it's, you're retired, you're hurt, but you could manage Triple H. It could be a DX reunion. But he didn't say DX. He had a trash bag, and he showed Triple H and Shawn Michaels inside, and they're like, yeah, we'll do it. They made the entrance, it was big, and then Triple H pedigreed Shawn Michaels. Everyone asked why, and the thing I've never understood is Triple H said he was tired of being held back by Shawn Michaels, right? He was his own guy, now he's the game. And then Shawn Michaels, forgave him? He's like, yeah, I get it, haha. And then someone jumped Shawn Michaels in the parking lot, and it turned out to be Triple H, too. The man just turned on you, within a couple months. Why would people not suspect it was him? I remember watching this and being like, why? I don't understand. Now, of course, this first DX reunion would be the spark to the Triple H Shawn Michaels feud that went 2 years. It was always these two. They'd always find each other. It was the John Cena Randy Orton feud at the time, except these were always good matches. It helped spark Evolution. It brought Van Dam to another level, teaming with Shawn. It brought Chris Benoit to the fold for that great triple threat match at Mania. And then, after they were done feuding for a little bit, Reunion 2 happened. I remember this one vividly. This is one of my favorite moments. Shawn Michaels had just finished fighting with Vince McMahon, and now Triple H was feuding with Vince, and the Spirit Squad was there, and Triple H was getting beat up by the Spirit Squad. One by one, they were running out, beating him up, and then Vince, called for the next guy, didn't come out. Called for the next guy, didn't come out, and then he got tossed into the ramp. Shawn Michaels came out. This was his return. He looked at Vince. And then he did that goofy run that he does when he's going down the ramp. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Where his arms are kind of flailing, and he's not exactly doing a run, but he looks like an old woman. He did that. And then he got in the ring, and they took out the Spirit Squad. And then they did, where they put their foreheads together, and they argued and argued. And then they turned to Vince, and they did the crotch chop. So Vince inadvertently reunited Degeneration X. And this was the best time that they did it. Unfortunately, this was cut short because the Rated RKO match where Triple H blew his knee out. This supposedly caused a lot of change for the WrestleMania 23 we went to.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the lines, we were supposed to get Triple H and John Cena. We were supposed to get Undertaker, but God, what was it? Batista was supposed to defend his title against someone else, and they were thinking of pulling the trigger on, I want to say maybe Shawn and Taker or Shawn and Edge. Something, but then because of everything, Edge and Orton got put in the Money in the Bank. We were supposed to have Hogan Big Show, and that turned into Kane Khali. It was card subject to change, folks. And now we're on to the third time they reunited on Raw. So Undertaker and Triple H had the match in Australia. And afterward, Shawn Michaels and Kane got involved, and then they called out DX, and I think they choke slammed him. I forget on which show it was. This is not as well in my memory because I didn't enjoy it as much. Shawn Michaels and Triple H came out on a Raw, and Shawn Michaels announced he was returning to wrestling. So they could do DX versus the Brothers of Destruction for the Saudi crowd, which on paper makes total sense. I remember everyone was worried how Shawn would do. Because, Taker was still part-time. Triple H was still part-time. Kane was, he was damn near full-time. And then Shawn Michaels is the only one that pulled his weight because H tore his pec seconds into it. Kane's mask fell off. And Undertaker, this is one of the times he said he was hot. Yeah, this DX reunion, not as fun.
No.
Not as memorable.
No.
I remember it because that's when Shawn Michaels introduced his shaved head. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun. Let's move on. Yeah.
Good memories. Good memories only.
Good memories only. I think a pipe bomb that gets overlooked is AJ Lee's pipe bomb. Remember that one when she talked about, sleeping their way to the top, and she essentially did the CM Punk one but against women, and
yeah, it kind of doesn't age too well anymore.
No.
There might have been a lot more truth than pretend in some of her statements.
Yeah, watching it back, it kind of makes you worried that maybe someone offered to help her sleep to the top and she turned it down, and luckily her wrestling was good enough. Yeah, and it's even funnier because it involved the Bellas, right? And if you remember who their father-in-law was for a moment,
how can you forget?
Yeah. This is one of those people like to say that this should have been called a pipe bomb. Yes, it was more scripted than Punk's, but it was for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
And they were trying to recreate it, and this is one of those times with their attempted recreation. It kind of made sense. Love AJ Lee. I'd love for her to come back. There's a little rumor and innuendo that, maybe she does. Maybe they pull out Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch.
That'd be cool.
That'd be fun.
Like for AJ Lee, you gotta think like that. That kind of gets you going a little bit,
Yeah.
That's got to scratch some sort of itch.
Dude, if her music hit at the Women's Royal Rumble, fans would explode. Like there'd probably be a couple in the stands that would combust. I said combust. COMBUST. Let's clear the air right now. I didn't. Yep. I realized what I said. A lesser known moment. You're probably not too aware of it. I've mentioned the New Age Outlaws quite a bit in this. When they first became the New Age Outlaws and they were first going for the tag titles and they had their first tag championship, they went after Legends. As I said, they went after LOD. Then they started feuding with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie. When they fought at WrestleMania, it was, of course, in a dumpster match. But Raw before this, they put Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie in a dumpster, closed it, and wheeled it off the stage. So remember how everyone's like, Zack Ryder, he couldn't defend himself because he was wheeled off the stage. Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie couldn't see what was happening. And they had to brace in the dumpster. At the time, Terry Funk had to have been in his 50s. And everyone they're like, haha, those crazy hardcore guys. Jesus. What someone would have said at that time is probably, oh my God. And that leads into in my opinion, the original pipe bomb, because it was before Punk, it was before AJ Lee. Joey Styles was a Monday Night Raw commentator for a minute. He was the original ECW commentator. I guess he was told to show a little more enthusiasm, have a little more charisma. He didn't like that. No one's sure if it was fully turned into story or if he just finally was tired of it and said to do it. But I remember he stood up and he cut a scathing promo on Jerry Lawler, cut one on WWE. He slapped Lawler a couple times. And he talked about how Monday Night Raw commentary is terrible and he wouldn't be back. And after that, he went to ECW, and from there, that was it. Yeah. If you want one more example of a good quote-unquote pipe bomb, you've got that, and then you've also got when Paul Heyman cut one on Vince during the Alliance time, but not on Raw. Now we're down to the final three, and I think these three, I will say, we had this list, we randomly generated the order. I think these three could be the three bigger Raw moments overall, and they're all involving a McMahon. Next one here. Remember when Vince McMahon had an illegitimate son? When they did the whole reveal, they had all the WWE, because it was a WWE superstar. And in looking back on it, this was supposed to lead to a big story.
Mm-hmm. This was supposed to be Ken Kennedy.
Well, not only that, but it was supposed to lead to his brother coming back. And then Ken Kennedy was going to fight for Vince and help him keep power. And I guess I wouldn't say his brother came back. His brother would debut. This is one of the times he was supposed to debut. And I remember they had everyone out there, and they kept giving clues. And it came down to, being having blonde hair. So, X amount of people left. I remember it had to be Caucasian, X amount of people left. But it came down to blonde hair and a WWE champion. And it left Triple H in the ring, or so they thought. And it was this big ha-ha, your son married your daughter, that kind of thing. And then, because Kennedy hurt Cena and Orton, and then he had the whole steroid issue, and it wasn't Kennedy anymore, even though it made sense. His name was Ken Kennedy. It became Hornswoggle. The first of two times that a mystery person was revealed to be Hornswoggle. The second, of course, the Raw GM. It was Hornswoggle under the ring. But yeah, it was Hornswoggle McMahon. He instantly ran in the ring, and I believe he started humping Vince's leg.
Yes, like a dog.
Like a dog. This little... And I'll say it, because if you remember, they called him Little Bastard. That was his gimmick name for like a year and a half, that Little Bastard.
Do you think that's what he called Shane when he was younger?
I secretly think this was all about Shane.
That little
but
bastard.
I guess I should explain. He was Cruiserweight champion. Because in another time, they did a Cruiserweight Invitational, and which I think back to this so much. Like, if this is a rule, why don't people do it? He slid into the ring as the bell was ringing. And then he slid back out and slid under the ring, which put him in the match. And he won the Cruiserweight title, and he was the last Cruiserweight champion until they brought it back for the Cruiserweight Classic. They took a title that had lineage of Jushin Liger, Brian Pillman, Rey Mysterio, Billy Kidman, and they retired it with a goddamn midget wrestler who didn't wrestle on TV at the time. Like, that was his segue into getting on TV. But after this is when he became Hornswoggle McMahon. The world was his until Vince started putting him through challenges because he's a McMahon, damn it. I remember he had to fight Khali. My wife and I watched, and it's confusing to me, WWE Vault. It's a great YouTube channel. They upload all these clips, all these videos. I love it.
It's like,
they
like
show
the new version of like the network now for
yeah.
the US.
they show when Kali chops Hornswoggle, right? And the vault has some gnarly ECW stuff. It has Mae Young getting powerbombed through a table. But when Kali connects with the chop, the camera cuts. You're telling me that people care more about a midget getting chopped than like a 95-year-old woman getting powerbombed through a table? Or Sabu getting his arm cut open and it getting taped back together? It's confused me, but yeah, they did this whole thing based off Hornswoggle McMahon, and then it was revealed the most contrived bullshit. I don't know if you remember this. They ended this angle with it turning out Finley was his dad.
Yeah. Yep.
But they faked the blood test so that way they could get money.
They had to get out of it.
Yeah, they realized it was shit. They realized they booked themselves into a corner by having it be Kennedy, and then Kennedy fucking up. So like, well, yeah, because it was supposed to be like a multi-year story. Because when it was, if I remember, they were going to reveal the illegitimate child. Linda, Stephanie, and Shane were going to be pissed at a new McMahon. They were going to take the WWE from Vince. Bring in, and somehow they were going to do it by bringing in Vince's brother. Because somehow Vince's brother owned half of WWE for years and Vince didn't know, blah, 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 blah. Then Kennedy would have to fight for his dad because since he was also Vince's, like, he had part of it somehow, and then Stephanie's side would pick Triple H, and Triple H was going to turn on them, and it was going to be this long-term thing. And then, because Kennedy did steroids, which he denies, but because he did steroids and because he injured Cena and Orton, it went to a midget, the only midget wrestler on the roster, a cruiserweight champion, and I remember I was so upset. This is one of the first times I remember being genuinely pissed off at a reveal. Like, Logan at that time, if we would have been doing Pro Wrestling Proverbs, probably would have made like an hour-long video on top 10 people who could be Vince McMahon's son, and he'd give all these reasons, he'd give all these facts, and it would make sense, and even his co-host would be like, wow, all these actually make sense. I'm hoping it's one of them, and then it turned out it's some goddamn kid, but instead of this time, it's not a kid from the crowd. No. It was Vince's kid under the ring.
It was a little bastard under the ring.
It was a little bastard under the ring. And for longtime fans, longtime listeners, I'm not going to make you read between the lines. Yeah, Nicholas is a little bastard. I'm pretty sure he's an adult now.
I don't think so.
Not yet?
No.
Clock's still ticking down. And then we're going to get Logan versus Nicholas. But anyway, Hornswoggle McMahon, disaster. Were you watching it this time?
Yeah, I was all in on this.
Oh, man. What did you think? I'm sure there was a moment where you're like, haha, that's funny. But then it finally clicks and you're like, wait, this has been going on for months. And it's Hornswoggle?
I didn't care for it after it happened, you're right. But I was really, as a kid, because what year was this? Oh, 6, 7? Around there.
So this would have been before WrestleMania 25. When did JBL fight Finlay? Because JBL ended up being like the McMahon's hired gun. So this is before WrestleMania 24.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was funny.
Like
as a kid, I thought it was hilarious. That
my favorite
Vince has Hornswoggles or something. That's so funny.
Well, yeah, because the whole time they told him as a WWE wrestler.
Yeah.
And I remember they were like, and he's like, oh, he's gonna be a big man. Oh yeah. And yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the best moment.
I remember, like, as a kid, because I knew, like, okay, Triple H is married to Stephanie. I know that. Or, like, they're dating. But, and then they kind of, like, teasing that it was Triple H. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. It kind of maybe, like, incestual.
And I remember he would have all these interactions with the superstars in the back. And I remember one It was like he was talking to Ric Flair, and he's like, "Could be your dad." And I remember, even as a kid, being like, "What? How's that work?" Because when they brought the roster out, like Jim Duggan came out. Come on. Yeah, this was the best moment to come from this reveal is when JBL was fighting Finley and he threw the trash can at Hornswoggle. And he fucking doinked him. Ah, good times. Second to last moment. We just talked about him a lot in the last one. When Triple H first married Stephanie McMahon. If you remember, which a lot of people don't, they kind of gloss over this now, Stephanie McMahon was in a loving relationship with Test.
I would say so. I'm sure that could still be alive and well today.
Yeah. They were going to get married. There was some, like, amnesia storyline with it, and then she eventually fell back in love, and he fought Shane to prove that he loved her, and Shane finally gave the okay, and Vince gave the okay, and everyone was there, and then Triple H came out. And at the time, like, Jim Ross hated Triple H. He was a no-good bastard. He's that, the goddamn game. And at the time, he was rolling with China a lot. But then he stopped rolling with China, and at this wedding ceremony, because of course in the ring, Triple H came out, and he stopped the wedding. And, because this is before they even dated, so there's no even real life, there's no inkling this should happen. And he goes, I have a clip to show you, and it's them in a Las Vegas drive-through chapel. He's driving, Stephanie's knocked out. I don't remember if it's drugs, I don't remember if it's alcohol, but she's knocked out. And at the drive-through, the lady, do you take her? Oh, yeah. And then, do you take him, Miss McMahon? And then he, leaned over and did a voice like, do. And they got married. The McMahon-Helmsley regime began. Stephanie had this grand reaction. You would have think this would have set Test up for just to be the ultimate babyface knight in shining armor. After this, he floated in the mid-card. Won the Intercontinental title, won the U.S. title, won some tag titles, got fired, went to TNA, did some steroids, went to ECW, died. Triple H, on the other hand, how does this forger, how does this assaulter, how does he get rewarded? It turns out a year later that him and Stephanie planned that. In kayfabe.
Yeah.
They did it to turn on Vince. And then, within a year of that, they were supposed to get married again, and Triple H canceled that wedding, and then, 2 years after that, they got married in real life. Star-crossed lovers, I guess. But yeah, for those keeping count, Triple H did a video acting like he was having sex with a dead body. Triple H committed blackface. Triple H turned on his mentor / best friend, and then did it again later.
Yeah.
And now, Triple H drugged and forcefully married Stephanie McMahon. And he made mention, a lot of people tend to forget this, because he called Vince McMahon dad. And he made sure to tell him that they did consummate the marriage. So, to add all these crimes up, Vince McMahon also raped Stephanie McMahon. And this was all a storyline comprised from Vince McMahon. The same Vince McMahon who doesn't have to do with Monday Night Raw, but wanted to do a storyline where he was the father of his daughter's child. Yes. Which is my way of segueing into the final moment. My favorite, in retrospect, Raw moment. Vince McMahon gets into a limo, and it fucking explodes. And
I was hot for this.
I'm not saying like a WWE explosion, right? Because we've seen some of those where lightning's hit something, or no, this
It's like it's
fucking
fireworks.
limo, yeah, this limo exploded, and this all started right. This, of course, like everything else on this list of ours, needs a little backstory. Vince McMahon started $1 Million Mania because he wanted to prove to the fans he could be likable. He wanted the fans to like him.
I was posted up next to my home phone. Everywhere.
Me too.
For that, I was ready.
Yeah, I entered family members. I entered friends. I ended up, I'm like, hey, you could win up to, $1 million. Yeah, he could give 30,000 away here, 20,000 away there, and then let's see if I remember the events. The stage fell on him.
Yep.
And then he came back to TV, but it was weird. He like had this blank smile. It was like something wasn't there. And this was actually supposed to lead to the illegitimate son thing. They were going to introduce his brother back, like all this shit. This was a big part of it. He walks through, he passes a bunch of the wrestlers, he says nothing, he's got this fake smile. Gets into the limo, and it explodes. And holy shit, this was a big thing. It was covered on news sources. People called the police.
Our president-elect called and asked if Vince was alive.
Yes, Donald Trump called. He thought it was real.
I did too. As a child, I remember I ran and I told my mom that Vince blew up, and we needed to like turn on like CNN or something. It was about to like happen. We had a conversation after that. Wrestling was not the same for me after the conversation.
And they do it. It's such a smooth moment. He opens the limo door. He gets in, like he looks around and he gets in, and as soon as he closes, it explodes.
The editing is like surreal on it. Like even now, like if you watch it, like I can't like tell where they cut really.
No. Yeah, it's huge. And like I said, it was going to lead to so much more. If I remember reading, so he did it because he found out he had an illegitimate son. So that's he was going to fake his death, and then it was going to lead to him coming back. If they got to go through with this part of it, because it's a little different from, just Kennedy. He was going to have to come back and fight for his company, and this time Vince would have been the good guy, which is odd to think about, but whatevs.
Yeah. I remember being so excited for his funeral episode.
Yeah, and for those wondering why this didn't continue, like, this seemed like a pretty big thing. It had been planned for months. You can't do a death storyline when one of your professional wrestlers kills himself, his wife, and kid within the same week. Yeah, so this happened. They were, like I said, they're gonna play it up. If I remember the explosion part, it's he found out he had an illegitimate kid, or he found out he was losing the company, so he's gonna fake his death so he didn't lose it. Kennedy and Triple H would still be involved. Just a couple tweaks, because Vince had to die. And then the following week on Raw, Vince McMahon comes on the screen. And I don't think anyone else had broke the news yet. I don't remember, because I remember being a little nerd after Road Warrior Hawk died, because I got on WWE.com and it had the Rest in Peace Hawk. So every morning I would get up and I'd check WWE.com to see if someone died. And that's how I found out about. That's how I found out about Eddie Guerrero. That's how I found out about Big Boss Man. So yeah, it didn't show nothing. Then Vince appears, and I remember him being like, "We're supposed to have a funeral. What the heck?" And he did the whole. There's supposed to be a funeral for my character, Mr. McMahon, but unfortunately, there's been a real life tragedy. Chris Benoit, who had missed the previous pay-per-view, was dead. No details were coming out. No show. It was a clip show for Benoit. And the next night for ECW, the show Benoit was rostered to, Vince McMahon again appeared on screen. And as more information has come to light, they regret doing a tribute to Chris Benoit. They regret mentioning his name. And at this point forward, you will never hear the name Chris Benoit again. And if you want to know more about that tragedy, what podcast has a 3-part installment?
Wrestling with Regret. I'm just kidding. Proverbs, of course.
And we also have a
That
episode
podcast
involving...
is almost 4 years old now.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
We also have an episode of our Women in Wrestling involving Woman to shine a little light on her, as her life and career was stricken from the record at that point too. But yes, in another universe, in a different multiverse, the Benoit murder-suicide didn't happen, and the Vince McMahon fake death played out. It's crazy to think. To me, that's wrestling's biggest butterfly effect. What if, right? Because I don't know if anything else in wrestling has such a hand in hand with each other. Like, that's the thing that stopped that dead. No pun intended.
Well, I think positively speaking, that tragedy obviously led to a lot of changes within WWE.
Yes.
Started like drug use policies, in-ring like hits to the head and stuff like that. So who knows like what would happen if that didn't happen?
Wrestling probably wouldn't have been looked at as favorably, and I mean, there's a chance that it wouldn't have gotten the mainstream success it did, and then Vince wouldn't have gotten scrutinized for his lawsuit, and you know what? All in all, we're probably in the better universe.
I'd say so.
But yeah, like I said earlier, that's probably my... I don't know if it's my favorite Raw moment all time, but it's one that sticks in my head. Like, I can close my eyes, and I can hear the door closing. I can see him walking by people and seeing Paul London with that goofy-ass smile. I can hear and see the explosion. Like, that's ingrained in me. That's a core moment. Whoever my little inside-out people are in my head that have to relive that whenever they think about it, my bad. It's wicked. And I figure we went through our whole list here. We got through all our members. But before we start wrapping this up, I just want to ask you, do you have a Monday Night Raw match that you regard as your favorite of all time?
Oh, match?
Yep, I figured just off the cuff.
Oh, I'll say, I don't know. Okay, the first one that comes to my mind is Punk and Cena 2013. The one before WrestleMania 29.
Okay.
That one. That's the first one that just comes to my head. Yeah, I'd probably go with that. That's a good safe bet. Maybe John Cena and London. That was a good one.
So
maybe one of the U.S. Open challenges for John. Those were
okay.
I really like those. What's yours? Tell me yours.
Mine is the first TLC match in Raw history. It was Kane defending the tag team titles by himself because the Hurricane got taken out, facing Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy.
Okay.
Facing the Un-Americans, which was Christian and Lance Storm, I believe, and facing Bubba Ray and Spike Dudley. This was such a good match. All the competitors that were picked for it were perfect. Kane single-handedly won for his team, which, you know, you wouldn't think he would, being the 7-foot giant with all these little guys that are usually ingrained in these type of matches. But no, it was a great match. It's probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite stipulation match. Probably my favorite TLC match, and a close second is the Undertaker Jeff Hardy ladder match.
I was just about to say that too. I think you just reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's a close second, and watching them both as it happened was great. The both of them were heavy inspirations for moments in my own wrestling universes. You know, a big tag team, usually someone would get hurt and they'd have to defend the title alone. But luckily, it's a TLC match; so they wouldn't have to do it by pinfall or submission. Or the young guy is just about to win, and he touches the championship, and the champion pulls him down and wins. Those are my two favorite ones. And then if I had to pick a favorite spread of time, it's when The Rock was undisputed champion. His match with Eddie Guerrero, his match with Ric Flair, the setup for the match with Brock Lesnar. Also a good time. This is also when we had Kane coming back. We had The Undertaker fighting the Un-Americans. Booker T and Goldust were teaming up. The Dudleys were about to get back together. It was a good time on Raw.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see what Netflix can do. They have a lot to live up to. Some pretty big shoes to fill with the previous decades of television.
All right, real quick before we go, give me your favorite Raw theme song.
The one Across the Nation.
That's a. I'll do "To Be Loved" by Papa Roach. That was a good one. That's a childhood one right there. Oh, those ones are back to back. Actually, those ones came back to back. Underrated one, I'll say. That one by Tonight's the Night, Bright Lights, Bright Crowd. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
that one. I like that one. That one's on my Spotify somewhere. I get hyped.
There's that one, and then there's one performed by Scott Ian of Anthrax. That's another good. It's called "Thorn in Your Eyes." It was the intro from. It was actually the one before Across the Nation, from '97 to 2002. That's another fun one. But yeah, I mean, if I guess the last thing I can say is if some of these Raw moments made you feel, stinky or dirty, or maybe you need a shower, definitely use the link in the description below. It is for Dr. Squatch. We are, of course, Squatch affiliates. He is the unofficial third member of Pro Wrestling Proverbs, and he brings to you amazing scents that are not only for the shower, but can be used in your bedroom as well. He also just brought out a shave kit. Everything's there for you. Use that link. You get 10% off any order of $20 or more. Flipped that. 20% off $10. No, I was right the first time. I had to just re-say it. It's been a minute. We've been away. Yep. 10% off any order of $20 or more for Dr. Squatch. Anthony, any final thoughts as we enter into 2025? Definitely the longest stay that Pro Wrestling Proverbs has had on the internet community.
Longest stay, but we don't have to really say that anymore because we're not going anywhere. Yeah, that'll be here in 2025. Got a lot of great content coming this year. We're always brainstorming. Always got some good ideas. Some long form content coming this year. This podcast is kind of long form already, as we're pushing 2.5 hours. So
well, that's our longest in a while.
So I gotta go take care of my child now, and probably eat dinner. So
yeah, and if you're missing us, pay attention to our social medias. We're still at time of recording, slowly releasing the text versions of our top 25 of 2024. And then, of course, you'll see us chat about Smack Talk Showdown, Lucha Wars, Retromania Wrestling, Tormina's Pizza, Dr. Squatch. We're everywhere, baby.